Hello, the one person who might be watching. I guess that could be me. I don't know. I've got live for the last chapter of Pride and Prejudice, and then if anyone turns up, we can have some questions. Elvis wasn't too happy about this change to our routine, because it's just coming up to midnight here, about a minute to go. So I think he was feeling, that I've disrupted disrupted what he's doing. So yeah, he was. Oh, hey, Sean. I thought you were going to sleep. Hi, Jane. Hi. Yeah. So well, I might as well get it started. I guess it's only 3 pages or so it won't take very long. So I'll just get that read and we'll move on. Thank you very much, Jane. It's very kind of you. All right then. So the last chapter of Pride and Prejudice. Hope I can read. It's not that bright in here, even though I've got. Yeah, don't worry. Treat it like a bedtime story, Sean. Yeah. So I hope I can see it. All right then. So here we go. Chapter 61. Happy for all her maternal feelings was the day on which Mrs. Bennet got rid of her 2 most deserving daughters. With what delighted pride she afterwards visited Mrs. Bingley, and talked of Mrs. Darcy, may be guessed. I wish I could say, for the sake of her family, that the accomplishment of her earnest desire in the establishment of so many of her children produced so happy an effect as to make her a sensible, amiable, well-informed woman for the rest of her life. Yeah, that would be a nice thing, wouldn't it? Though perhaps it was lucky for her husband, who might not have relished domestic felicity in so unusual a form, that she still was occasionally nervous and invariably silly. Mr. Bennet missed his second daughter exceedingly. His affection for her drew him oftener from home than anything else could do. He delighted in going to Pemberley, especially when he was least expected. Yeah, I can imagine. Oh dear. Mr. Bingley and Jane remained at Netherfield only a 12-month. So near a vicinity to her mother and Meryton relations was not desirable, even to his easy temper or her affectionate heart. The darling wish of his sisters was then gratified. He bought an estate in a neighbouring county to Derbyshire, and Jane and Elizabeth, in addition to every other source of happiness, were within 30 miles of each other. Kitty, to her very material advantage, spent the chief of her time with her 2 elder sisters, in society so superior to what she had generally known. Her improvement was great. She was not of so ungovernable a temper as Lydia, and removed from the influence of Lydia's example, she became by proper attention and management less irritable, less ignorant, and less insipid. From the further disadvantage of Lydia's society, she was of course carefully kept, and though Mrs. Wickham frequently invited her to come and stay with her, with the promise of balls and young men, her father would never consent to her going. Mary was the only daughter who remained at home, and she was necessarily drawn from the pursuit of accomplishments by Mrs. Bennet's being quite unable to sit alone. Mary was obliged to mix more with the world, but she could still moralize over every morning visit, and as she was no longer mortified by comparisons between her sister's beauty and her own, it was suspected by her father that she submitted to the change without much reluctance. As for Wickham and Lydia, their characters suffered no revolution from the marriage of her sisters. He bore with philosophy the conviction that Elizabeth must now become acquainted with whatever of his ingratitude and falsehood had before been unknown to her, and in spite of everything was not wholly without hope that Darcy might yet be prevailed on to make his fortune. The congratulatory letter which Elizabeth received from Lydia on her marriage explained to her that by his wife at least, if not by himself, such a hope was cherished. The letter was to this effect: My dear Lizzie, I wish you joy. If you love Mr. Darcy half as well as I do, my dear Wickham, you must be very happy. It is a great comfort to have you so rich, and when you have nothing else to do, I hope you will think of us. I am sure Wickham would like a place at court very much, and I do not think we shall have quite money enough to live upon without some help. Oh dear, that's sounds typical, doesn't it? Any place would do, of about 300 or 400 a year, but however, do not speak to Mr. Darcy about it if you had rather not. Yours, etc. Oh dear, horrible. As it happened that Elizabeth had much rather not, she endeavoured in her answer to put an end to every entreaty and expectation of the kind. Such relief, however, as it was in her power to afford, by the practice of what might be called economy in her own private expenses, she frequently sent them. It had always been evident to her that such an income as theirs, under the direction of two persons so extravagant in their wants and heedless of the future, must be very insufficient to their support, and whenever they changed their quarters, either Jane or herself were sure of being applied to for some little assistance towards discharging their bills. Their manner of living, even when the restoration of peace dismissed them to a home, was unsettled in the extreme. They were always moving from place to place in quest of a cheap situation and always spending more than they ought. His affection for her soon sank into indifference. Hers lasted a little longer, and in spite of her youth and her manners, she retained all the claims to reputation which her marriage had given her. Though Darcy could never receive him at Pemberley, yet for Elizabeth's sake he assisted him further in his profession. Lydia was occasionally a visitor there when her husband was gone to enjoy himself in London or Bath, and with the Bingleys they both of them frequently stayed so long that even Bingley's, got to try and turn the page, this is the last one. Even Bingley's good humour was overcome, and he proceeded so far as to talk of giving them a hint to be gone. Miss Bingley was very deeply mortified by Darcy's marriage, but as she thought it advisable to retain the right of visiting Pemberley, she dropped all her resentment, was fonder than ever of Georgiana, uh, almost as attentive to Darcy as heretofore, and paid off every arrear of civility to Elizabeth. Pemberley was now Georgiana's home, and the attachment of the sisters was exactly what Darcy had hoped to see. They were able to love each other, even as well as they intended. Georgiana had the highest opinion in the world of Elizabeth, though at first she often listened with an astonishment bordering on alarm at her lively, supportive manner of talking to her brother. He who had always inspired in herself a respect which almost overcame her affection, she now saw the object of open pleasantry. Her mind received knowledge which had never before fallen in her way. By Elizabeth's instructions, she began to comprehend that a woman may take liberties with her husband, which a brother will not always allow in a sister more than 10 years younger than himself. Lady Catherine was extremely indignant on the marriage of her nephew, and as she gave way to all the genuine frankness of her character, in her reply to the letter which announced its arrangement, she sent him language so very abusive, especially of Elizabeth, that for some time all intercourse was at an end. But at length, by Elizabeth's persuasion, he was prevailed on to overlook the offence and seek a reconciliation. After a little further resistance on the part of his aunt, her resentment gave way either to her affection for him or her curiosity to see how his wife conducted herself, and she condescended to wait on them at Pemberley, in spite of all that pollution which its woods had received, not merely from the presence of such a mistress, but the visits of her uncle and aunt from the city. With the Gardiners, they were always on the most intimate terms. Darcy, as well as Elizabeth, really loved them, and they were both ever sensible of the warmest gratitude towards the persons who, by bringing her into Derbyshire, had been the means of uniting them. The end. How wonderful. That's really nice. Yes, definitely, Lydia. Very deluded, Jane. And £400, almost £40,000 today, is it, Sean? Well, that is quite a lot. I mean, when they talk about she's very money focused, I think, Austen, isn't she? I suppose they might have been at the time. But when she talks about, it's got a fortune of £10,000 or, 3,000 or 5,000 a year, yeah, it does seem very important. But I'm glad I read it. I had a much better time with this one than Northanger Abbey, which I did like, but it took me a long while to read it, and I didn't get into it half as quickly as I did with this one. And yeah, it's been really a pleasant surprise, I have to say, and thoroughly enjoyable. So it's my favorite Austen so far, but I've only read two. We'll have to see what next year brings. Yeah. So I don't know. There's four people here. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything about Pride and Prejudice before we move on. Um, and then I don't know. Can take a couple of questions. Persuasion's your favorite, Jane. The characters are older and more mature. Yeah, Persuasion's the one that Netflix have just made a rather panned film of, I think, isn't it? I haven't seen it, but everywhere I look on YouTube or anywhere else, they're saying how terrible it is. But I guess, yeah, I mean, if they're older, I suppose they're being more mature. They're probably wiser in the ways of the world. Yeah. So, Jane, would you recommend that be the read for next year then? Well, maybe I will. Maybe I will put it down as the one to be read. Um, I do have the only other book I have that's on its own is Emma. Ah, Zoshia's here, I think. Persuasion is the best novel, but the best work is a short novella, Lady Susan. It's hilarious. Yeah, that's something that really surprised me. Actually, is how funny uh, Jane Austen really is. I mean, there were funny moments I thought in Northanger Abbey. I mean, maybe a few things kind of went over my head whilst reading it because I think other people have said it's quite funny. But I didn't find it half as funny as I found Pride and Prejudice, and so, the characters were really quite brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I like well, I did like Mr. Bennet, but then towards the end, I kind of went off him a little bit. I found him a bit kind of maybe weak, which annoyed me slightly. But I thought Mr. Collins was great just because he's so truly awful. But Mr. Bennet did get some more respect from that final letter. So Lady Susan, I'll have to check that one out as well. It's a shame because she only has a few, works. So I guess, I was going to say it's a shame to have to wait till next July to to read it. But then, if I don't, then I'll quickly run out of things to read. So Jane, you're in Australia, I see, huh? 8 a.m. Right. Mm. Yeah, it's midnight here in the Czech Republic, so um, I thought I would try and do a time that was more convenient for people. But then, of course, being a Saturday and people have families, they're probably all sitting down to dinner in the States. And Sean, I know, is fighting off sleep. So, yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Have you any questions? Anything you would like to ask? Feel free. If not, then I suppose I also can turn in. No, I don't know. The problem is, depends how quickly people type. Elvis has given up and gone back to bed, but he's very. I do wonder if he has OCD sometimes, the way he behaves and acts to things. He is quite funny. It's like he will never stomach anybody walking behind us. So if he sees people coming down the street, he has to sit down or he has to lie down and wait for them to pass before he will, allow us to continue, which is quite a strange thing. He very much likes his routines. Yeah, yeah. He's he gets very annoyed if we deviate from them. Good question. Any plans for Victober? Yeah, well, nothing in stone. I'm doing a few things with Sean D. Standfast. Uh, for example, one of them is this misplaced authors, where we're trying to bring back some authors who have become forgotten. They were quite popular back in the day, which was either the Victorian era or the Edwardian era or the interwar period. And yeah, so I guess probably in October we will look to read some Victorian ones. Um, I've started on one of the books we're reading because we're doing this throughout the year. So I've started on one of the books for this misplaced authors, and it's really good actually. It's an adventure story because obviously we're doing August of Adventures this August. Supposed to start on Monday, but I've taken on far too much, of course. So I thought I'd, get a bit of reading of that under my belt. So I think, yeah, to answer your question, Zosia, is that yeah, I will be reading some as yet unconfirmed, forgotten Victorian author. It's kind of sad, really. I think it just shows the transient nature of literary tastes and things when you see how many authors were extremely popular in their time and then now they're forgotten, or maybe they have just one or two works that you know them for, but nobody reads anything else they did. I mean, I know Michael K. Vaughan was talking about Henry Rider Haggard, for example. The man had a hugely prodigious output, and yet you ask people today, and they'll probably only be able to name things like, well, only probably King Solomon's Mines or She. And yet, I have one of those Delphi ebooks, and it's well over 17,000 pages, and there's tons and tons of novels in there that are just completely forgotten. And I think it's sad. I mean, I suppose I understand to some degree that the views expressed by some of these people isn't necessarily politically correct for this day and age, but I think the merits of the work that they've written. I don't think that should really suffer because they're not writing with an agenda. So no, I completely agree, Jane. I mean, Project Gutenberg is a treasure trove of stuff, and it's amazing. It's amazing what you can find there. And of course, there are alternatives. I mean, sometimes you can't get things on Project Gutenberg, and you can try somewhere like the Faded Page or the Faded Page. I can't remember, which is like a Canadian version. And yeah, Project Gutenberg Australia has stuff that you can't get here. I do like the way they take people on honor when they say, this isn't available outside Canada, and yet the website is available outside Canada and you can download it. So I do feel sometimes a bit guilty, but then, it's not like even that person's probably going to mind so much because they've still been dead, even if they haven't been dead up to the maximum requirement. Yeah, exactly. Alexandre Dumas, he is to some degree misplaced, isn't he? I mean, what have you got? The Count of Monte Cristo, The Three Musketeers, Man in the Iron Mask, and then everything else. I don't know. I know a few others, of course. There's more in the Three Musketeers cycle, but you don't see it. You don't see them on shelves in bookshops. Jules Verne is another one. But I think he suffers from poor translation. Which is a shame. It is a real shame that somebody should go through and retranslate his works because I think the best of his work, the best translation of his works is probably in Just Around the World in 80 Days. And I think the sad thing with that is, when the Victorians translated it, they put the effort into it because, of course, the hero of the book is an Englishman, whereas a lot of the other ones have atrocious translations, which is a shame because I'm sure there's just a wealth of so much amazing work that remains to be discovered. But yeah, no, I find the public domain to be fantastic. for these resources of books, but also, again, with the project I'm doing with Sean, we're looking at old radio shows and silent films, and it's just all this stuff is free and available and not utilized enough, probably, which is a shame. Yeah. I don't know whether to just like keep talking until something else pops up, or just sit in silence, but I don't think that would be particularly entertaining. Uh, yeah, it's funny. I keep seeing like five people, and then it's only one person, two people writing. Really, Jane. So translation makes a huge difference. The more translations of Tolstoy are far superior to more modern translators. Uh huh. Yeah. I mean, I haven't read them. I haven't read uh, Tolstoy. I don't think I might have read. I think something he did from Crimea, um, something to do with Cossacks. I can't remember years ago, but I do need to read him definitely. Oh, hi, Summer. Hi, Angela. Oh, don't worry, not too late. Doesn't matter. It's recorded. You can catch the last chapter. I'm not sure you probably both know it extremely well anyway. And I struggle to read it because the light's not very bright. I apologize. I don't know how dark it looks there, but it feels pretty dark here, and I actually struggled a bit to read it. So yeah. So we're just on a few questions. I don't know, Summer or Angela, if you have any questions you would like to ask me about anything, feel free. Zosha's already asked me about Victober plans, and Jane's been talking. We've been talking about some public domain books and how wonderful it is that they're available. Thank you so much, Summer. Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm just I'm quite humbled really to get to 500 subscribers. It felt for a while there, I felt really kind of stuck because I hovered around, I think, 400 and something for like half a year. But then I know my output decreased, and that probably played a part. And, it's a shame because my output's increased over the summer holidays. Um, but I don't think it's sustainable once I'm back at school, although I plan to do my best to, I won't release something every day, but at least 3 times a week. The good thing with doing these projects I'm doing with Sean, is that we will have ongoing things throughout the year, so that will keep some content coming. Jane, when does school start back? Well, in the Czech Republic, they're very, very what's the word, exact on these things. So the school holiday starts on the 1st of July, and school starts on the 1st of September. If, of course, the 1st of September falls on a Saturday, then school would start on the 3rd. So it's like the closest day to the 1st of September. That's when everybody goes back. As teachers, we have to go back a bit sooner. I'm not sure exactly when this year. Probably it was said in a meeting at the end of the last school year, but these things can go on for 2-3 hours, and it's all done in Czech, and my brain kind of explodes when I'm sitting listening to Czech for more than an hour. So yeah, but it's usually the last week of August that we will go back, and it's quite nice to be at school without the kids, to be honest, because you can obviously get things done and get ready, and it's a bit of fun. We have a bit of fun there. It's a very fun place to work anyway, but when it's just the teachers, it is pretty funny. So yeah, we'll start back in basically another month, but also we do take time to settle in as well. So I think there won't be any teaching even the first week of school. Everything, by the time all the administration stuff and everything gets done, we will be taking some time to get settled in. Angela, is there anything you're particularly looking forward to with the silent film project? Yeah, I am. I'm looking forward to watching some silent films. I haven't seen that much in my life. I mean, Sean is definitely the expert when it comes to this kind of thing. I'm just really along for the ride and the experience of watching them. I remember watching, of course, a few maybe Charlie Chaplin's or Buster Keaton's, or I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think even some very early Laurel and Hardy was silent. I know they also did early talking films as well, but I'm pretty sure they did some silent ones. Um, and there's a huge number of things we're going to watch, which I think is going to be very interesting. Um, Sean and I were talking about it the other day about what the allure is of them, and there is something kind of magical and dark and romantic about silent films. And he pointed out the fact it's probably because they're dead, and yet we're watching them. And I think, yeah, I think there's something to that. I think it's something quite, I can't put my finger on it. I can't even describe sometimes how I feel when I watch them. It's an uncomfortable feeling, but not necessarily an unpleasant one. And I want to really learn more about them. And I think that's it, because you know I can't marry up how at the age of them. I don't know, maybe I'm not making myself clear, but like, my grandmother, for example, she was born in 1916. So of course, silent films are the norm then. And you look back and it's like, so it seems so ancient, so removed from us. And yet, of course, I knew people who were born in that era, who were alive in that era, as I'm sure most of us did. Um, and yeah, it's strange, but I do find them very interesting. I mean, are you a silent film fan, Angela? Have you got any favorites? Yeah, I certainly like some of the uh, golden age of Hollywood films, from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. But I'm really not so up on the silence. Jane, apparently the world's first feature-length film was made in Australia in 1906 about the Kelly Gang. Not sure how correct that is. Sean would, yes, I'm pretty sure he would. Though I guess he's fallen asleep because I know he was pretty tired. Um, yeah, I don't know, but why not? It could well be. Um, Angela, I'm a neophyte, but so far my favorites are City Lights and Nosferatu. Well, I know Nosferatu, and I know it's one we'll be looking at in the future, probably, I guess, around the scary season, so Halloween. And I suppose, it's linked to something like Dracula, and Dracula is something you could read for Victober as well, so I think that'd be interesting. But City Lights, I don't know it, so I'll have to check that out. I know we will watch as well at some point Metropolis by Fritz Lang. It's something I've seen chunks of, but I've never seen it all the way through. I remember we kind of looked at it a little bit at university, which was interesting. Um, I did a course, a module while I was studying, which was what was it called? Can't remember. It was basically to do with European cinema, which was very interesting. Every week or every fortnight we watched some European films, and uh, I mean non-English speaking European films, and it was yeah, enlightening. I mean, it opened up a lot of new films to me. So, but yeah, I struggle these days. I have to say, I struggle watching a lot of the films that come out. I find I just get bored. I'll pop some. I mean, I subscribe to too many things, and when I sit down, I'll only really watch things, for the umpteenth time. I'll watch, films from the '80s or before. Films that I grew up with, or um, But I struggle a lot with some of the films today. It's just like I'll put it on and maybe I'll be engaged for half an hour or so, and then it's like I'll stop and go and read, and then I never go back and finish it. So Jane, my DVD of Little Otti. Yeah, yeah. Well, that would be interesting, Jane. Is it? I'm guessing it's in Czech with English subtitles. Um, yeah, well, dark. I mean, you read about the story, I guess, or the synopsis before you bought it. Yeah, it's a pretty harsh story. I mean, most stories that come from Erben are very dark. It's like when I talked about his book Kititsa, a bouquet. Um, the Czech films they've done of that very firmly in the horror genre, and I see why. I mean, they're pretty horrible stories. Actually, I have another edition, I think, right behind me. I bought another edition of it because there's not a huge number of English translations. I think there's only two, and this one has. Well, you can see pretty much from the kind of illustrations that they've got that it isn't particularly nice always. It's hugely popular because, of course, he was part of the revival movement, bringing the Czech language back. Because I don't know if everyone's aware, but of course, the Czech Republic didn't exist. There was Czechoslovakia before that, and then Czechoslovakia didn't exist prior to 1918, and it's very much part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And I have an old travel book. I have a facsimile edition of Bradshaw's Travel Guide, 1913 to Europe. And if you want to find, the Czech Republic, you have to look it up under Austria. Prague, according to that guide, is a city in Austria. So you can see how in the 19th century, any kind of movement to recover Czech identity has been venerated really today. So yeah, people like Erben are literary gods, because a lot of the time people just wrote in German, as it was considered to be much easier, because that's the language that everybody was speaking. And well, look at Franz Kafka. He's Czech, but he only wrote in German. So Summer, thank you so much. You love my Beyond the Book series. Yeah, I like doing it. It does take a bit of time to do because, I mean, Steve Donahue was saying the other day you have to do your research. Well, yeah, you do, and you don't for like normal videos. Perhaps it's not so bad, because you've been reading it. You can, you don't have so much research to do. But when I do Beyond the Book, I do have to actually look stuff up and find out if there is anything interesting regarding the book that I've chosen. It's going to be, the next month is just going to be related to the books we're reading. So the last one was Treasure Island. The next one will be probably The Lost World, and so on. So I'm hoping there's some interesting stories attached to that. And I've really got to try to get into recording some of these in bulk because, as I say, I don't want to have a huge drop off when I go back to school. So it would be nice to keep up some form of output, and then God knows when the house starts getting built. Maybe I'll end up just doing videos on the ups and downs of building a house in the Czech Republic. Dear. Yeah, we're currently pending planning permission at the moment. So it's taken almost 8 months up to now. It's not usual. So, well, that's it, Jane. Not really. I'll be lucky if they start this year. They said they should give they should give permission probably sometime in the middle of August. And I doubt they will start building this year because, if they start in autumn, then they run straight into winter, and the place. Yes, summer I can. Oh, thanks, Angela. Very kind of you. Yeah, the place where it's being built is in the mountains, and there's a lot of snow there. I don't know if you've probably seen on some of my videos the snowfall that we get up there, and I don't expect them to necessarily start building. So the only thing I know, Jane, in answer to your question, is they have to finish by I think it's June 2024, or they have to start paying me money as a penalty. Now, when I saw that in the contract, it was, I think, still 2021. So I was like, no way is it going to take till 2024. Now, of course, I'm not going to be surprised if it does. The only reason I'm in a hurry to move and to get there is for Elvis's sake, really. I don't like him having to spend another summer in a flat in town because, he becomes a bit limited when it gets really hot, and it's been so hot the last couple of years, and not super prolonged, thank God. Like today isn't too bad. It's rained, but we can't avoid walking on the pavement, and it's just too hot for the dog's paws. Especially because I live on Main Street, if you like, and it's not particularly wide. So like when you get a lot of traffic on the road, I think it adds to the heat as well. It just becomes, pretty bad. And also the way this flat is set out is terrible because there's a massive window here. It's a very old building, so it's got very high ceilings and things, and it can stay cool if you get it right. But the window looks directly to the east. So in the morning, the sun just comes in from there. And then I've got another window. It's a very long room, another window looking to the west. So in the evening, it just heats up this room. And of course, the sun comes in from there. So yeah, it's pretty tough. Yeah, show the stages of the house. Something that's right. I'm not sure how interesting, but it'll have to be one of those videos I speed up. Yeah. Plus, you're going to have to move your grain. Yeah, well, that's something, isn't it? To have to move everything. Not too worried though, because we've got two like minivans at school, and I'm sure we'll be able to borrow them, and I'll be able to, wrangle some kids, friends of mine, kids and things in to do it for, a small fee, probably a bit of pocket money, some ice cream or something like that, in order to do all the lifting. When my sister was staying for a while, we had we got a new bed and stuff, and I got two of the kids to come and assemble it. They loved it. And it was, something I could have done myself, but it would have taken me a long time, and it's not work I enjoy. Whereas the kids were like, "Yeah, give me power tools, let's do it." So yeah. But yeah, I'm hoping, I'm hoping it's gonna look really good in the background once I'm in my house and start broadcasting from there, and I've got things as I want them to be. Though I imagine, of course, that's another thing that will take time. Is getting it the way I need it, and of course, with growing cost of having to build it, it's going to probably be quite bare at the beginning as well. I imagine. I do have an agreed upon price, but cost of materials and things are insane at the moment for this kind of thing. And plus, another thing is we have been a little bit affected by the war in Ukraine, because a large number of builders in the Czech Republic come from Ukraine, and several of them, quit and went back to Ukraine to fight and this kind of thing. So, that has a knock-on effect. And then things like steel came from, for example, Ukraine, and the factories weren't working. I don't know if they're back working now. And of course, COVID as well impacted the material supplies. So yeah, prices did get pretty insane. So I mean, yeah. Well, yeah, Jane, it is agreed, but only to a point. I mean, if things go up too much, then I will have to pay more. It is annoyingly written in there, and it's not even though I wanted it taken out. And the price is the price, but I had to be reasonable. I couldn't, of course, bankrupt the company, but yeah. 40%. Yeah, it's crazy, absolutely crazy expensive, Jane. Summer, did you already tell us what you're reading at the moment? No, I haven't. What am I reading at the moment? I am reading a book I mentioned yesterday, which I still have here actually, because I was looking at it a bit before I started the live, which is the Beethoven book, A Life in 9 Pieces, for part of Gareth's Audible August. On his channel, Books, Songs, and Other Magic. He's running this reading event. And it's a really nice book, I have to say. I mean, I like Beethoven a lot. Not as much as I like Mozart, but I do really like Beethoven. And, kind of looking at his life, well, I'm still actually only on the first chapter, so I can't say how it feeds in, but it's such a nice idea to look at his life through his music. And I'm also very excited, although I don't have it with me at the moment, to read rather Mozart: A Life in Letters. That's going to be really fun because I know from reading one of the Mozart books behind me just how bad sometimes Mozart was in his letters, especially to women. He was, I guess it was kind of like the 18th century equivalent of the, I don't know if I can say it, I don't want to offend anyone, but like sometimes the 18th century equivalent of the dick pic in terms of the letters he wrote and things. So, and I think although Foreman's film Amadeus and Schaeffer's play isn't, historically accurate, the character of Mozart, as played by Tom Hulce, is probably fairly spot on from what I understand of him. But yeah, it's just amazing the lives these people had. From reading the Beethoven book, I didn't realize that they had to. The best way for them to make money was to put on concerts, and they had to put the money forward themselves in order to get the concerts up and running. And of course, it was a huge risk for struggling musicians. The rewards were great because they would pay a certain amount, I guess, to put on the concert, and then they would get to keep the house takings and things. But Beethoven, he is funny because already he had this argument with this aristocrat, a friend of his, who asked him to play some music, to play the piano at this party, and Beethoven said no, and they got into this argument. And he said something like, there are thousands upon thousands of princes in this world, but there is only one Beethoven. So, you have to admire his plug. I'm guessing that was probably before he started losing his hearing, which I'm also looking forward to knowing more about, because I don't know how deaf he was, because we know that Beethoven had problems with his hearing, but I don't know offhand, like whether he was stone deaf or whether he would have got by with a hearing aid in our time. I guess it would have been one of those big ear trumpets back in those days, if he needed to use it or not. I do remember reading something about him having to feel the vibrations of the music in order to know whereabouts they were in that. But as I say, I don't know if he was stone deaf or not. So yeah. Am I reading anything else? Yes, I'm reading an adventure story, of course, that I'm supposed to start on Monday, but I've already started now, called Blind Corner by Dawnford Yates. Hi, Evin. Nice to see you. Yes, I'm up late or early, depending how you look at it. Hope you're doing well. By a guy called Dawnford Yates. It's a pen name. I think it's William Cecil Mercer. Thank you very much, Vin. It's very kind of you. Very kind indeed. And that's fun. Typical kind of John Buchan style adventure, I would say. But yeah, I kind of raced through 2 chapters of that again earlier this evening. It felt like a really kind of long wait, because I normally go to bed at 7:30. I know it seems ridiculously early, but we work to a different time here. Elvis and I are up at 4:45 pretty much every day, and the whole of the rural areas of this country work like that. I mean, most people start work at 5:30, 6 a.m. and finish at 2 or 3 p.m. So they have a large chunk of the afternoon free. So I get into this thing with them really. I find I'm up and awake, so I have to. Hi, Cheryl. Oh, that's very kind of you. Thank you. um, So yeah, it's strange. It's something to do apparently with the old Austro-Hungarian days. The old emperor um, Franz Josef, he had this thing about being an early riser and getting everything done, and all the court had to follow it. And I don't know why Eastern Bohemia in particular has kind of stuck to that in terms of the way they work today. But it's not bad. I mean, it is quite nice to think that people do have so much more. Well, I don't want to say so much more time off, but they do get that chunk of the day, and it is kind of weird when you see the rush hour and the traffic outside is as biggest at like 2:30 in the afternoon. Yeah, so but yeah, it's not bad. So, for people just joining, feel free to ask some questions. We've already had a few good ones. Well, they've all been good, of course, from everyone, but I mean, only a few questions we've had so far. So, feel free to ask away. Anything you like, really, about life in the Czech Republic or about me or what is Elvis doing? Well, Cheryl, it's Elvis, like a sensible boy, is asleep in bed. It's 1:45 in the morning here, so he got up when I came to start the live, and then very indignantly he stormed back to bed. Yeah, so he's fast asleep because, as I say, we get up at around 4:45, 5 o'clock every day. So, uh, you know, he'll be he'll be asleep. He doesn't like to deviate from his routines. He's very regimented, let's say. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He will. I have to say though, Jane, in full disclosure, I don't stay up necessarily once we come back from the walk during the summer holiday. I quite often go back to bed. At the moment, I go back to bed and I read, and this going back to Summer's question, I read The Master and Margarita because I'm reading this with Sonia Deveni, and we're reading 3 chapters a day, and it's amazing how quickly that adds up and how quickly we've gone through it. And so when we come back from the walk, I lay back down on the bed and read that, and then I might have a short, sleep for another hour or half an hour. But obviously during uh, the normal working time, back in the school term, once I'm up, and then I'm off to school. We start school at 10 to 8. The lessons start here, and so yeah. So definitely, Jane, he will still be up. Though he does go back to bed every single day. He goes back to bed once we get back. So it's all right for him. I'm heading off to work, and he's quite often by then lying on my own bed, then looking at me, kind of like, you have to go, ha ha ha. Summer, thank you so much for reading Pride and Prejudice. I'm looking forward to your reading Charlotte's book with Steve. Yes, The Warden. Yes, I've already recorded chapter 1 of that, and yeah, it's a fun book. I have to say, I'd forgotten. I mean, it's been years since I've read it, but I've decided not to read it. So I'm going to read my chapters, and I'm going to watch Steve's chapters. I'm not actually going to read the chapters myself. Yes, I'm not going to look at any of the even number chapters at all. Just going to let Steve read them to me. So it's going to be a weird way of doing it. I do have to I wanted to pre-record a couple of the chapters, so it might look a bit strange when I'm like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed Steve's version when I haven't actually seen it yet, maybe. So that's a little secret there when you watch it. But thanks so much, Vonta. It's very kind of you. Very kind of you. Jane, I was just about to ask that our school goes from 9 to 3:30. Yeah, we do finish earlier. It depends on the days. For the teacher, for the kids, they have afternoon school a few times a week, so they can sometimes finish at 2:30, but otherwise they finish at 12:30. So we definitely finish at 12:30. The whole school finishes at 12:30 on Fridays, which is nice. And then because we want to have, I mean, we don't have particularly big classes anyway, because we're we're a village school. We have only 180 or so students, but we still don't want to have necessarily the whole class in a particular class. So when the kids do PE, for example, they're split into two groups. So one week, the one group will have PE and they have to stay till 2:30, whereas the other group maybe go home, or they will have some other specialist subject where they have to stay till 2:30. But nobody's at school till 2:30 every single day of the week. So yeah, definitely we have different times. Yes, Vin, no progress yet on the house building. It's just currently awaiting planning permission. And unfortunately, I'm in a place now, a district where, well, I probably shouldn't say, though I doubt they speak English, but apparently notoriously picky planning department. So I won't mention the place just in case they're watching and they make it more difficult. Jane, there are 6 books in the Chronicles of Barsetshire. Wonder if you'll enjoy it enough to keep going. Yeah, well, actually, The Warden's the only one I've read. And Steve did say to me that he expects us to read all of them. I was rather non-committal in it, not because I don't want to, but obviously it's quite a commitment to have to read something every day. I mean, Pride and Prejudice was tough. I mean, I enjoyed the book, but it was quite tough. Having to sit down every single day and record yourself reading it, and especially I didn't look ahead, so I didn't always know how long the chapter would be, and I didn't want to pause or do any real editing. So sometimes, as you see, the videos vary in length. Towards the end, I did edit it more. I would sit down, record a chapter, go off and do something else, come back and record it again. But in the beginning, no. And it was challenging. Definitely, there'll be The Warden. I don't know if it would be good to read the whole of the Chronicles of Barsetshire in one go. It might be nice to break it up a bit. Might be nice to have maybe different guest readers as well, because it seems a shame that we don't do more of this on BookTube, because we're all making these videos, or people doing it who are making these videos, and there's as we were saying before, so much material in the public domain which is absolutely free for you to perform in any way you want. So yeah, why not do it? I did it. I did it at Christmas. I don't think too many people watched it, but I did do it with Michael K. Vaughan, Rambling Raconteur, Jack, Roz from Scallydangling About the Books, Kate Howe, and myself. We read a chapter each of Christmas Carol, which was really fun. But there you go. Someone, not all of us read well out loud. Well, I mean, I don't know. It's not. I don't think I read that well out loud compared to some people. So I think it's just the way people sometimes think about themselves. I find it sometimes very challenging. I mean, reading Pride and Prejudice is challenging to read out loud because often the word order goes against um, what you expect it to be. They said things opposite way around. I mean, the easiest example is not he said, but said he. That I kind of got used to, but other things not. And of course, your brain runs through what it wants to say rather than what's actually on the page sometimes. And I did have a couple of mishaps as well with the warden doing chapter one, because there are a couple of words I came across that I haven't said before. I haven't read them aloud before, so you don't necessarily know how to say them. And then afterwards, you think, oh, maybe I should have read it through silently myself. And then no, but I find for me the best way to read it out loud is not to read it necessarily beforehand. I don't want to think about it. I want to just read it. And sometimes I think it does. Uh, you know, the style can be a bit funny sometimes because I'm not sure of how the tone of the thing is going to go. So you might have noticed a couple of times I kind of end on a higher raised voice and then there was no need to yet, or the sentence ends abruptly because I was expecting it to continue because I haven't looked at it beforehand. Um, but then I think the problem I have is if I look at it too much, then I will start making more mistakes, I think. Um, You missed some silent film. Well, you can ask anything about silent film, Vin. We did talk a bit about Nosferatu. I'm sure you've seen that. I don't know. Have you seen much silent horror films, Vin? Summer. Okay, well, not all of us have. You'll be. I don't. I don't. You see, again, I don't know if I have. I don't feel. What I hear probably isn't the same as what you hear. Um, you know. Um, yeah, exactly. Lovely to listen. Oh, thank you, Jane. Thank you so much. Very kind of you all. Thank you, Cheryl. um, yeah, what am I going to say? Yes, I have a lovely voice. No, I don't. I don't necessarily think so. Although I don't completely disagree because, as you can see, I don't really mind listening to the sound of my own voice and talking a lot. You've seen most silent horror films. Hmm. What's the scariest one then? Because I've been doing this gothic read along with Vin and others, which has been really interesting. I'm not sure all the books have been amazingly great, but it's certainly been interesting from like a historical standpoint, to see the evolution of the Gothic novel. And I'm really excited because I think, and Vin, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking not next month as in August, but September, we will be doing Frankenstein, and I'm so excited to read that for the first time. I've even bought myself the Klinger annotated Frankenstein, which is quite big. Not as big as the Klinger annotated Dracula, which I also got, but it looks really, really interesting, and I can't wait to get to that. Oh, sorry, Jane, I missed something there. I guess so many booktubers are reading the usual hyped books rather than classics. Yeah, I do find that, and I don't like to criticize people. I do really, no. But I do find there is generally a lot of repetition across different channels. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm very guilty of repeating myself on my own channel. You'll hear a video can't go by without me talking about Three Men in a Boat or Treasure Island, probably certain things. But yeah, sometimes when I'm looking through, it's like the same books appearing again and again and again. And even when it comes to the classics, it's the same classics appearing again and again and again. Um, and that's partly what Steve and I are hoping to do. Um, Sean and I are hoping to do with this misplaced authors is to really look at some titles that haven't been read. Um, Scare, yeah, I knew it when I said it, Vin. If you put yourself in my shoes, somebody who's terrified to watch horror films, even at the age of 42, when I'm in the house alone, actually, especially when I'm in the house with Elvis, when he starts barking at nothing, that scares me. I have to say, I do get. I have that overactive imagination that kind of makes me think that things are wrong. So I won't watch horror films generally, and I won't read horror books at night. There was one called um, The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. I don't know if you've read it. It was chilling for me. Probably the rest of you are like, oh yeah, I read it and it was funny, or it was, it wasn't that scary. For me, it was pretty scary, and I had to stop reading it at night. I'd only read it during the day. And even thinking about it now, I've got like, chills up my spine. I don't. If you haven't read it, you might enjoy it actually, Vin. It's pretty good. Another one was The Wolf and the Watchman, which wasn't necessarily scary. It was just gruesome. But again, I didn't like reading that at night. The most shocking is Haxan, Witchcraft Through the Ages. It's a mix of dull documentary and Satan-infused heavy metal album cover. Right. Yeah, it sounds very, very odd. Jane, Frankenstein is very different to expectations based. Yes, yes. I quite believe that. Of course, and I know, even though on the Klinger cover, on the hardback cover under the dust jacket, they've got the movie version of Frankenstein embossed on it rather than uh, Mary Shelley's version of. So I'm not, when I say Frankenstein, I mean Frankenstein's monster, rather than Mary Shelley's version of him. But you see, yeah, I really want to watch one of the Frankenstein. Is it Bride of Frankenstein with Elsa Lanchester with the hair? Yeah, I want to see that for sure at some point, because I read last year. I read a biography of Charles Lawton, and they were married, and yeah, and I want to see that for sure. I should reread Frankenstein. I wasn't a fan the first time around. Well, then you should reread it. Angela, I'm excited for Frankenstein. I love that book. Oh, see, great. That's good. Jane, I can't watch or read graphic horror, so I'm pushing my boundaries by starting a Stephen King read along. Carrie in August, most people probably think it's tame. I'm sure Vin does. I mean, Vin probably reads Carrie to his kids. Very joking, Vin. I know you wouldn't. But yeah. I haven't read it, actually. I haven't read too much King. I guess I have read Salem's Lot and Misery and a few others, but I've not read Carrie. North the Equator. Hi, Mark. Relative new subscriber here. I've been enjoying all your varied content on your show. That's very kind of you, North of the Equator. Thank you so much. And it's really nice to hear from you. That's nice. It makes it, feels worthwhile when people say such things. Revenant reads in. Yes, Bride is a great horror film with some nice comedy as well. Yeah, I think that's nice when you get a bit of comedy. I mean, the horror films, I do find the horror films I find scary are the ones that have that kind of religious element to them. The Omen always terrified me, and it would still terrify me. I'm not sure I want to watch it. I came across the book the other day, the ebook. It was on sale, so I got it, but I'm not sure I'm going to read it. I don't know. I did see, sadly, one of the actors in it, the photographer David Warner. He passed away earlier this week. It is a good film, though, The Omen. Just, terrifying. And you see, even now, like, I've got the door open there because I don't like to shut Elvis out. And even now it's dark there and I'm seeing monsters behind me, Please don't write in the comments, don't look behind you or something like that, because it would be, I'm not sure my heart could take it. Yeah, that's right, the head roll. Yeah, I'll never forget that. Dear, oh dear. Um, Jane, I'm interested to read Jeanette Winterson's Frankenstein. Frankenstein. What would that be about? It sounds like a contender for Criminoli's event coming up in August. Frankenstein. I don't know. But yeah, no, The Omen is great. Yeah. Oh, gosh, you see, I'm freaking myself out now. Oh, why am I looking? Oh, you know, yeah, because obviously we were talking earlier about the Kititze and Urban's fairy tales that are really horror stories. I was looking up. It's not too far away across the border in Slovakia. There's the castle. I forget the name of it, of Elizabeth Bathory. If you know her, I'm sure Vin knows Elizabeth Bathory, who was a vampire inspiration woman who I think killed over, I don't know, 300, 500 women and girls, and she used to bathe in their blood. This was a long time ago. Not that makes it any better, but it was like 500 years ago. But you know, this part of the world, Central Europe, it's a good place for horror, I think, for real life horror. Ah, okay. Right, Jane. Frankenstein is a retelling of Frankenstein centered around AI. Hmm. Hmm. Thanks, Vin. Yes, I should probably go to bed myself, seeing as it's now just after 1 in the morning. So, don't read Carrie to them, by the way, Vin. Good night. The Blood Countess. Yeah, yeah, that's Elizabeth Bathory. Yeah. Um, I haven't been to her castle. It is you can go there. I'm not sure I necessarily want to. Um, but it's like that other guy. That's like um, a true horror, really. And I forget his name. Gilles de Rais, who was one of the uh, lords or aristocrats, one of the knights who fought with Joan of Arc, was like one of the biggest child murderers in history. Like proper. I don't mean just killed children, but like mostly boys. Horrific things. Horrific. And yet, on the one side, he was seen as this hero because of his association with Joan of Arc, and then on the other side, he's seen as this horrible, horrible character because he was, you know, a prolific murderer. So I don't know if you've heard of him, Gilles de Rais. You can look him up as well if you like this kind of um, gruesome aspect of history. He did get what was coming to him, though, thankfully. Whereas with Elizabeth Bathory, there's too much debate over what happened to her. Some say she was like walled up in the castle and left to starve. Others say she just was like under house arrest and could run around doing what she wanted. So I don't know. I wish there was more medieval history on nations other than England, France, and Spain. Yeah, yeah, I think that's a fair point, Jane. It does seem, of course, they're the most popular ones. Oh, Carrie, thank you so much. Oh, that's very kind of you. Yeah, they're certainly very popular for history, of course. Um, I guess you get Portugal occasionally as well because of their global empire. But yeah, this part of Europe um, is a bit forgotten, I suppose. Um, don't get a lot of well, occasionally when people study the history of Spain, it does cross over a little bit to this area because, of course, the what's his name, Charles the First, King of Spain, was Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, and obviously of this area as well. But it's fascinating, there's so many things about history in this part of Europe and in the Czech lands and that I knew nothing about until I moved here. Um, it's like the whole defenestration thing. You've probably heard of the defenestration of Prague, um, that ignited the 30 Years' War when two Habsburg, Catholic Habsburg emissaries were thrown out of a window, that led to, as I say, the 30 Years' War. But it's something like the third or fourth instance of defenestration within this country, which is pretty, you know, incredible, really, that the country should happen to be so synonymous with this idea of throwing people out of windows. Um, I know they did it in Prague again beforehand, apparently. So the famous one isn't the first one, where they hurled a bunch of people off big tower in Prague and onto spikes and things below, which is pretty grim. And then even I think the most recent was in 1948 when the son of the founder of Czechoslovakia found himself, well, they say like suicide, but probably wasn't, because his death opened up to the communists taking power. North of the equator, I know you plan on settling in the Czech Republic. If you don't mind me asking, why not the UK? Ah, Sheila, okay. I don't mind you asking at all. Why not the UK? Well, I have nothing, of course, against the UK. It is the country of my birth, but it's not necessarily somewhere I feel a super strong attachment. Okay, my family is there, but I'm 42 years old and I've lived in total throughout my life a maximum of 12 years in the UK. So I've actually lived in one block of my life. I've lived here now in the Czech Republic longer than I've lived anywhere else. I've never lived, it'd be 10 years in October, and I've never lived 10 years in one go in any one place, including the UK. So I don't really have, maybe it sounds strange, but my as a child, I grew up abroad. My family was living abroad as well. So they weren't living at the time in the UK for at least 10, 12 years in total then. So, and then when I went off to university and started working myself, I always wanted to work abroad. I guess, I don't know. It's hard to say, really, but it's nothing necessarily against the UK. In some respects, I'm a little bit jealous I don't live in the UK when it comes to availability of books, especially secondhand books. It's not particularly easy to get secondhand English books in the Czech Republic, and after Brexit, sadly, it's even more difficult because you have to pay taxes now on the imports and things, and it can be quite a lot. It's like my parents sent me a birthday present the other month, and this month it was at the beginning of this month, and I had to pay almost 50% of the value of the present extra to receive it. So it's like a double-edged sword, that you get sent something and you think, oh, that's really nice, but then you have to pay for the privilege of getting it. So Cheryl, are you fluent in the language, or do a lot of people speak English where you are? Definitely not fluent in the language, even after 10 years, I'm ashamed to say. But part of that is because of the job I do as an English teacher and spending a huge amount of my time in English. And the people who employ me don't necessarily want me to speak Czech. So it sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but it's true. They don't want me to resort to explaining things or telling kids things in Czech when they want them to struggle through in English. Of course, I do get by. I can function well on a day-to-day level. I can have conversations in the pub. I can obviously buy things in the shop. I can generally make myself understood. The Czech language is very difficult. I spent 4.5 years living in Japan, and I found Japanese easier to learn, at least from a speaking and communication point of view, than I do Czech. Czech is so tough when it comes to grammar. Not as tough as Finnish or Hungarian, but it's one of the toughest European languages even tough among the Slavic languages as well. Um, it's got 7 cases. So, the endings of words are always changing. And, you know, even proper names like Mark isn't just Mark, or Prague isn't Prague. It changes. The end of proper nouns change, which, it's quite difficult. Do a lot of people speak English? I think more people speak English here than I would ever have imagined. And certainly after 10 years, a lot more people speak English here. But no, it's not bad. It- Czechs are well-educated people, and if they don't speak English, they speak German or Russian. Um, but English, you can get by. You don't need it. Things like the house. Vonta, any chance you will vlog the progress of that? I will when there's some progress. But things like the house, I can't manage on my own. I would be too nervous to try and speak Czech in like the planning office, or when I'm arranging the building. So I'm very lucky that I have 2 friends through the school that I work at who have helped me, held my hand every step of the way, and they've done all the talking. They've negotiated things for me. They've gone through the contracts and everything for me. I'm so lucky. But I couldn't have done that, because on some level I could have, but I would have been so worried. It's such a costly mistake that it's better to then be able to blame somebody else. No, it's better to have somebody else to kind of help you. Yeah. So, but I will definitely vlog it if there's any progress. I will try my best. Jane, you must have a smattering of quite a few languages living abroad. Yeah, I think that's fair. I have a smattering of definitely a few languages, but unfortunately, it's like a jack of all trade, master of none. Well, I like to think my English is pretty good, but I can, I studied German at university, uh, but it's a long time ago, and I find that the knowledge is there. I can read it much better than I can speak it now. Um, After a few beers, I can speak it better than I can at the moment. Obviously, I studied German and French at school, German at university, Japanese whilst living in Japan. And I enjoyed that. That was fun to learn because it's something so different. Um, it's almost like a puzzle element to it, like you're doing some kind of, you know, um, decrypting something, because it's completely different from what you're used to. And then when I moved to Hong Kong, I did start learning um, uh, Mandarin for a little bit, although they speak both Mandarin and Cantonese there. And some Cantonese I got just for being able to, tell the taxi where I wanted to go. And that was purely practical purposes, because if I asked the taxi to take me somewhere in English, they would charge me more money than if I asked them in Cantonese. And then ordering food from like our favorite uh, restaurant to be delivered to work, um, I learned just how to say my favorite dish and to take away and where it was and stuff like that. So, I can do a few things. Czech, of course, and I did start Ukrainian um, back when the war started, because we have a couple of hundred refugees in town here, and also at school we had some kids. So a few of us, I think around maybe three to five of us at school started learning Ukrainian just to be able to help the kids. And then, of course, typically, 50% of the kids didn't speak Ukrainian; they spoke Russian. But some of the older members of staff at school still speak Russian because of their experience. Um, yeah. During the communist days of Czechoslovakia. Okay, we're reading contracts. Yeah. Yes. People help. The the kindness of, well, not so much strangers, but good friends helped me with the contracts for the house. Jane, I studied German as well, and I cannot believe I used to be able to read novels and speak fluently. I have forgotten most of it now, as I don't, but that's very true, Jane. If you don't use it, you do lose it. It's there, and it takes some coaxing out, I think. I was surprised when really put in a situation. It's like my boss actually. He doesn't speak much English. He's fluent in German and obviously Czech, and he's learning English, and he's come along amazingly well. And we do speak more so in English now after 3 years. But when I started there, he would speak to me in German, and I would speak back to him in English because he would understand me, but didn't actually have the words to tell me what he wanted to say. And I would understand his German, but couldn't remember everything I wanted to say back to him. So it was kind of funny. So yeah, there we go. Gosh, I hope I'm not boring you. It's an hour and 20 minutes of me gabbing away. So I should probably then maybe go to bed, 20 past 1. And I'm sure the rest of you have other more interesting and exciting things to do this morning or this evening than listening to me talking about my favorite subject, myself. So then, oh, yes, I think so, Jane. So thank you so much, everybody. Really, I'm very humbled by all of your support since I've started the channel. It's been really lovely getting to know you all, and maybe we should do this again, even just for a chat from time to time. It would be fun. It would be really nice. Thank you, Summer. Very kind of you. All right, everybody. So thank you, really. Thank you ever so much. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you. Thank you all ever so much. Do take care of yourselves, and I hope you enjoyed Pride and Prejudice. And yeah, look forward to seeing you for the Warden. And that's it then. So I wish you all good morning, good night, wherever you may be. Take care, everybody. Bye bye. Oh, bye bye, Sheila. Thank you.